Since I was not familiar with the manufacture of the decal set specific for the A-6e Intruder in 1/72nd scale, I tested a piece of the decal that was not intended for this one-of-a-kind paint scheme on a painted scrap piece of a model using my favorite setting solution, Walther's Solvaset, and it was perfect. The decal laid down nicely with no damage to the decal. When decaling this model, I will jump from port to starboard, fuselage to tail, in order to give the decals a chance to set somewhat so you don't move them when handling the model. You may choose any sequence you wish, but this is the method I am most comfortable with. The first decal I am applying is number 503 to the top of the port wing. This is followed by the serial number of the aircraft on the port side of the tail. A U.S. insignia is then applied to the top of the port wing. I note there is no insignia applied to the top of the starboard wing. Please observe that I placed the model on a stand adjusted to fit this model, but that this makes it more difficult to see what I'm doing on the fuselage sides and the tail. The number 503 is now placed on the top of the starboard wing. When necessary, I use a paintbrush to apply some water to the decal to straighten or smooth it out, and use a paper towel to remove the excess water. Then Walther's Solvaset is used to secure the decal in place, and a sponge is used to push the decal onto the surface. This is followed by another paper towel to remove any excess setting solution. USS Theodore Roosevelt and U.S. Navy is placed on the port side of the fuselage. This is followed by a small decal applied to the upper right corner on the port side of the tail, which is a tiny 03. Serial number 159314 for this A-6e is now secured to the tail on the port side, which is centered toward the bottom of the tail. Squadron AJ is applied just above the serial number centered on the tail. Note the J portion is perpendicular to the serial number. The squadron mascot, which looks like a clown to me, is placed to the right of the AJ on the port side of the tail. The starboard side of the tail has the identical decals applied as was on the port side. The only difference is the placement of the mascot to the left of the AJ towards the rear of the tail. On the starboard side, I am now applying the U.S. Navy USS Teddy Roosevelt decal on the fuselage. The number 503 is placed on the starboard side just under the cockpit. In the upper left corner of the tail on the starboard side, the small O3 is applied. A larger 503 is now placed just under the cockpit towards the front on the port and the starboard side of the fuselage. It is now obvious that the U.S. Navy wanted everyone to know this airplane is number 503. On the air intake for the engine on the port side, a warning decal is installed just below the number. A U.S. insignia is placed on the port side of the fuselage, just to the right of the U.S. Navy decal. The other air intake warning decal is now applied to the starboard side, just below the 503. The last U.S. insignia decal is attached to the starboard side of the fuselage, just left of the U.S. Navy decal. The last decals to set in place on the A-6e Intruder is the yellow rescue, positioned under the cockpit on both the port and starboard sides. These are placed next to the fairly large red arrow. That completes all of the decals. Note, there were none supplied for the under the wings. Painting TCP 1202, Federal Standard 36375, Light Compass Ghost Gray, on the small parts for the underside of the aircraft using a Vega 2000 airbrush fitted with a 0.3 millimeter or medium tip. This will complete all of the painting of this color, as I am doing each side of the parts. The last spray painting required is sand on a pitted tube that will be cemented to the front of the tail. TCP 804 Flat Grimy Black is being hand painted on the tires of the wheels for the Intruder. Note that I am doing both sides of the tires for the model. I chose flat grimy black rather than flat black to give this model its own characteristics. If you have any questions about techniques explored in this video, or general questions about this build, please post your questions in the comments section below.